All right, I think I'm live. Got a little bit of lag in the music. Not in a good mood tonight, everybody. Tonight, I got to rant a little bit. But first, I got to go mute these channels. Just closed them down. That'll take some pressure off of my computer. I don't even know where to start. I wonder if I still had the. Yeah, there's all kinds of stupid stuff up here. I'm not even going to refer to X because it's just become like a filthy, stinking liberal cesspool lately. But it's all for good, though, because all these swamp creatures are coming out and they're being exposed. Um, Even the fake MAGA, all these influencers out here that are pushing the whole MAGA thing all these years and go President Trump, yay, 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 and then they're turning and talking shit and just being just stupid idiots. Just stupid, 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 stupid. And that's harder to take than kind of dealing with Canada and the spewing puke that's coming out of there. Some of these people, their prime minister and some of their people in their parliament, and I don't even know where some of these people are, but my guess is that they're on the east coast or the east side of Canada, and like maybe bundled up in Ottawa. I don't know, but it's wherever Canada's liberal cesspool is out of. These people calling the United States a toilet, and they don't even understand what's going on. But the point is that these people are so freaking stupid. They don't even realize that their own government let the Mexican cartels in. Like, come on, guys, you can come up here. You can come in through the port of Vancouver. We don't check our shit up here. Less than 1% of everything that comes in through the port of Vancouver is checked. So fentanyl is coming into Canada like crazy. It's Canada is now the number one supplier, manufacturer, and distributor of fentanyl across the border into the United States. Yes, indeed. It's pretty sickening. We get our southern border closed, and then our northern partners, they get mad because Trump is doing something that they don't understand and that they're still half asleep. They don't understand what the hell is going on. They just don't. And I have a feeling that some of those people too were some of the influencers out there that were, pushing, real hot and heavy on the Great Awakening, and because something isn't going the way that they expected it to go, or the way that they thought it was going to go, because they don't see any major arrests going on. They start crying and puking and getting all bent out of shape. All right. I have to, let me see here. Let me bump on over. I just got to open this up because I got to kind of keep an eye on chat. That's the only way that I've got to look at chat right now. So, yeah, Canada. My advice to you, and everybody, excuse my French, but shut the fuck up until you know what's really going on, okay? Because I guarantee you, in the not too distant future, you people are going to go hide under your rock that you came out of because you don't have the balls to come out and admit that you were wrong. And then there's those people like me that are going to go, "Oh, don't worry, it's okay. You didn't know what was going on." But you know what? Now, and the people that just don't get it yet, they're never going to get it, and those are the people that are going to get left behind in the dust. I'm sorry to say it. Okay? All right. Now, let me get on to the other stuff that I wanted to talk about because I got to clear some things up. You all notice that, and it's been said many times, those that are guilty or the guiltiest are the ones that scream the loudest. And if you just look at the cesspool that's going on over on X right now, because I'm telling people that, I mean, I'm just surprised because I thought that some of these people would be a little bit more awake than this. But what really breaks my heart is that there's all these people that turned on Trump, and they were like supposedly his staunchest supporters, and now they turned on him because they're pissed off about the big beautiful bill. I read it, okay, including the appendix and the index and all that stuff. There's over 1,000 pages, and I went through it, and I can guarantee you there is nothing in there that's bad. Now, the version that I have right now might not be I downloaded it in to make sure that they could appease a few more people, but I guarantee you the main bulk of that bill is not going to hurt anybody. When and it's mostly the Democrats, and there's a couple of Republicans. Like when you look at Thomas Massey, he's a freaking punk. He needs to just go away. This guy is like worse than the slime coming off a slug's belly. That's how bad this guy is. But I got to tell you, okay, they're putting out a truth. Okay, they're saying 17 to 20 million people are going to be affected. Hell yeah. But that's 17 to 20 million illegal aliens that shouldn't be on this shit in the first place. They weren't here to work for it. They didn't pay taxes. They didn't have this stuff taken out of their paychecks for their whole working lives to get the Social Security or to get the disability or to fall on hard times and have to get SNAP benefits. This stuff was given to them freely when they crossed the border and went into a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state. California, Washington State, Colorado, Nevada, New York. To name some more. And the Republicans in those states, shame on you. You could have got out and voted. You could have helped to overwhelm their shit, but you didn't. You stayed home. You just believed that the plan was going to work. But the plan doesn't work unless you actually put something into it. So I don't understand what is going on with you people. I really don't. Okay? The one thing, and I'm going to be very careful about how I say this, but every single Democrat, day is coming, one in line to pay for it. Bunch of traitors. All of them. Not just traitors to our country, they're traitors to humankind. Just because of the things that they've been involved in that traverses the whole world. It affects everybody. The things that they've been involved in and the things that they do. I mean, a small piece of it was seen on a laptop in the New York Police Department. And it made grown men cry and made grown men throw up because my question is are they really human beings? All right. I have three things that I just wanted to touch on tonight. And I'm sorry. I'm just in that mood, so I don't get it. Alligator. I don't know how many of you actually watched Fox News where DeSantis and Trump and Pam Bondi and I think Benny Johnson was over there too. He rebroadcast and he was actually there with them and doing his thing with them. But if people would put their TDS off to the side, their cognitive dissonance off to the side, and actually listen to what the man says, the man, Trump, daddy, okay? He's your daddy, and he is. If they would listen to the words that come out of his mouth and the things that he says and go like, why did he say it that way? Is he just being mean verbally like he does in his tweets? Doing his mean tweets? He's trying to tell people things, okay? And what I got out of that message when I listened to what he was saying today, and it just reinforced what I've been thinking ever since this whole thing came up. And hold them there until they can be deported to their country. We have lots of airports, international airports, and airplanes on agents to make sure they get to where they're going and they fly them back to their country of origin. And no, they're not going over the ocean and dropping them in the frickin' ocean. I mean, people who are actually putting that stuff out on TikTok and all these other places, I don't think, and you look at them, I think they've been smoking too much crack. They don't have a brain cell left. These people are way far. Look at their eyes. You can tell. So what I think this is, they're not deportation centers. I think they are a holding facility, however, though, for the traitors of our country. All of these politicians, these celebrities, and maybe some influencers out there, these are people that at the very least committed sedition and caused people to do things that they probably never would have done. And they're like Antifa. I'm talking about why BLM was even formed. A lot of black people don't even believe that BLM is a legitimate organization. They think that it's stupid. But what it was put together by the likes of George Soros. Okay? People don't look at that. They don't understand that this stuff was put together by a bunch of evil people to play people against each other. Black against white, brown against yellow. Okay? Now, treason and sedition, I believe, are what that's there for. What we're hearing in the in the mainstream media is that they're leaving it to be alluded to that illegal immigrants are going to be put out there. That's not what it's for. MS-13 might be evil. The Zetas might be evil, but they're human beings. And then you say, but so are those politicians. I beg to differ. I do. Those of you that have heard about the Black Eye Club know what I'm talking about. And then again, social media, especially X, because it's wide open. Anybody can pretty much say what they want. I mean, they allow porn on there now, blatantly out in the open. It's like, what the hell did, Twitter went from one extreme to the other. From shutting everybody up and shadow banning you or totally removing your account to letting everybody go free for all, say whatever they want, even though it's blatant lies, and then throwing porn in there on top of it. So my point is, another way that you can tell what's going on is you look at the people that are screaming the loudest about Alligator Alcatraz. It's not the illegal immigrants. Most of them, like Trump said, are self-deporting on their own. A lot of them are. The ones that are screaming the loudest are politicians that are guilty. The guilty are the ones that scream the loudest because in their case, they know what their punishment is going to be. They're okay with making other people be erased, but they're deathly afraid of it themselves. They're more than deathly afraid of it. So again, I'm just encouraging people. I don't care if you're left or right or in the middle. And even if you've got TDS, put your cognitive dissonance off to the side for a few minutes and listen to the man speak. Listen to what he says. And those of you that have been listening to him, promises made, promises kept. There's only one promise that he didn't keep yet, but it's not like he didn't try. He hasn't stopped the war between Russia and Ukraine yet. But he's not going to feed into it either. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I just want to mention a few more things about President Trump. He's been called the stable genius for years. He's got one of the highest IQs. He's got probably the best business sense of any person that's alive on the planet right now. He's always 5 to 10 moves ahead on what his plan is. And I guarantee you he's going to keep the plan. And again, I talked about his track record. And the note that I put here, promises largely kept, because the one promise that he didn't keep, but he tried like hell, was to get the war in Ukraine and Russia to stop. But I think that's going to happen soon. I think there's going to be a revelation there. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. There's going to be a revelation going on there. Okay. The other thing that I want to talk about, when I first heard it, I was like, hell yeah. USAID shutting its doors. I watched so many videos today of these employees that no longer have jobs there walking out, wondering now, crying, how am I going to pay for my house? And then, you do a little research and you find out that these people are living in, multi-million-dollar homes. How can they afford that working for a non-government agency? Okay. And I apologize for if you hear some whining in the background. My dog has just been on edge all day today. She's been very clingy. She needs to be like in my lap, but she's almost 100 pounds and she's too big to be in my lap. What I thought was funny is you got these people that work USAID. A large majority of them, they have a job there, but it's already been leaked out. A lot of them, their job was they sat at a computer and they high thinking type job. Okay. But here, these same people were making enough money to pay for $1 million homes. Okay. And USAID was financed majorly by subsidies from the federal government, which came from your tax dollars. Okay. And then a lot of us did some research way back in the day. Let's go back to 2017 when IRL Media first got started. USAID was one of the first places that we tagged as far as being a non-government agency, but was involved in some pretty shady stuff. Some of the first things that came up were with Haiti and the Dominican Republic, with either hurricane or volcanoes, and illegally taking children from those places. Y'all remember Laura Silsby? She worked for a non-government agency that got money from USAID. Also funnel money over to supposed religious or Christian or Catholic organizations. The majority of them, I think, were Catholic organizations. They funneled this money over, and then what they were doing, and my friend Patriot Roy D, he followed them religiously, the guys that were on doing the border stuff every day, and he would give me updates on what was going on. I'd watch some of their videos, but a lot of those people, they were being brought to the border by the coyotes, those that made it, those that could pay, and those that could pay the final fee. They would get to the border and they would drop their ID cards, their passports, or anything that showed who they were, and they would be given new IDs at the border, and they would be given Visa or MasterCard debit cards with a certain amount of money on it. And I've heard that there was maybe 500, 1,000, 15, 2,000. It doesn't matter the amount, but this is money that was being funneled starting from USAID and then funneled over to these NGOs that were illegally giving these cards to the illegal aliens. And they said they're, they've been here, there, they never broke a law. They broke a law the first time they stepped across the border and stayed here without trying to become citizens or applying for asylum and then going through the process. Excuse me. They've been here illegally since day one. They are illegals. They broke the law. They got to go. So thank God that's one place that's gone. All right, so now we're going to talk about Ukraine and Russia. Primarily Ukraine, because there's some things that need to be said about Ukraine. Okay, number one, if you see my X account, you see that I have the Ukrainian flag up there. I support the Ukrainian people. I do not support the Ukrainian government, and we're going to find out why. And I think that's the other reason that Trump is holding off any kind of military aid, is because if you do a little bit of research and talk to some of the right people, it's not that hard to find out what's actually going on over there. And I actually have a number of friends, very close friends, my fiancé and her mom, and some other friends that I talk to on a my fiancé and her mom almost every day, the other friends on a fairly regular basis about what's actually going on in Ukraine. And unfortunately, some of the people that I follow from Ukraine on my X account, they either sway past some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about because they either don't know, or if they know about it, they're too embarrassed to talk about it. And there's one girl that wrote a blog about it, and she denies it. It's straight up denial. But I'm hearing from a lot more people that some of the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about is actually true, what's happening over there. This is stuff that you aren't going to hear about on cable news. You probably won't hear about it from too many on X, because most of these people are putting their face out there. So not only do the Russians know who they are, but the Ukrainian government knows who they are. And the real boogeyman here, in my opinion, is the Ukrainian government. And that's going to answer why we're not giving them any military aid. Okay. So I have this note here. It says, over the years, the narrative around Ukraine and Russia has been fed to us in carefully measured portions. Like I said, if you dig deeper beyond the headlines, you start seeing a different story if you talk to the right people. So if we go back and rewind back to 2019, President Trump made the initial decision to delay military aid to Ukraine. Okay, there was a reason for that. Back then, though, the media called it controversial, but the truth, I think, is actually a lot more strategic. It wasn't to abandon Ukraine. It was to encourage the negotiations and not have an escalation. Okay, he was trying to be a real peace broker, trying not to have bullets, words, not bullets. We fast forward to today, and Trump is doing the same thing. He's holding back on military aid to Ukraine because he's trying to push Zelensky and Putin to sit down, face each other at the table, and talk this thing out. Trump believes that this is something that can be talked out. He does. But like I said, I've been in contact with people who are living through that chaos over there right now. And it has been suggested to me by 9 of the people that I talked to, plus 2 Russian people that were also part of that group. So a total of 11 people. I would have been number 12, but I'm just the one that's getting notes. These people are telling me what's really going on over there. Okay, so they suggested to me that there are rogue Ukrainian agents that are behind the attacks on their own civilian infrastructure. Okay, let's go back to when this whole thing started. What was it, like 2010, 2012? They had snipers on rooftops in Kiev. And there was a protest. And then there were some shots fired on the street. Well, they said that there were shots fired on the street by police officers. But in reality, going back and looking at it, these snipers on the rooftop were the ones that took the first shots. They were dropping civilians, and the civilians thought that the police were shooting at them. So that's why some ran and others were more brazen and went after the police. The police were actually made the patsies or the scapegoats in this whole thing. But what they didn't expect, that there would be a handful of young, brave men that were like, hey, I heard shooting from over here on a rooftop. They entered that building, they went up to the roof, and they confronted a man dressed in military garb, kind of like what you would see special forces use, you know, the body armor and knee pads and all that stuff, and the mask. And they jumped this guy, this sniper. They beat the living shit out of him. They eventually killed him. And then, because here they were, the whole rumor is that these were Russians that were on the rooftop shooting at the people in the streets. This was a Ukrainian man that was in the Ukraine army. And he was one of the, I think they were, was in his pocket. But there are a lot of Ukrainians that were denying that it was the Azov, that they're not Nazis. They weren't Nazis. Okay. So it happened then, and I still think it's going on today. Now, I believe that Ukraine is being used as a pawn by some pretty powerful people and players here. By NATO, because most of the countries that are in NATO, they have a bone to pick with Russia ever since it was the USSR. But as we know, not only did the USSR get dissolved, but there were countries that came out of the USSR that came out and were supposedly supposed to be their own sovereign country, but they were admitted into NATO. Okay, so they had protection from Russia in case something else happened. That was what it was all about. Okay, I'm going to do one special show just on NATO itself. It's probably going to be about a 45-minute to go through the whole background of NATO and why it was formed and who formed it. Okay, and the reason that I say supposedly sovereign is because if they became part of NATO, they're basically, because they agreed that they would lick the boots of the big guys of NATO just to get that protection. Okay, now in his first term and even in his second term, Trump has been fighting NATO. I don't know why he's even got to go back and refight them all over again, and have to redo what Biden broke. But these people stopped paying their fair share for protections and what they were going to put in for support for these other smaller NATO countries. So he's having to go back through and rehash all that again. And now that he's got some of these people kind of leaning towards Russia needing to they need to talk to Putin, but they won't do it because they know that Putin's right. These NATO members are doing what they're doing. Not all of them. The certain ones that have the push are doing it so that they can keep pressure on Russia, because they're getting pressure from the military-industrial complex, because the military-industrial complex can't exist without wars, and war is profitable. It goes pretty deep there. Okay? And then the CIA, we saw this with North Korea. After the war, the Korean War was over, it didn't take too long for the CIA to move into North Korea and actually were running it. This is not a well-known fact, but those of us that were in researching and digging into this stuff back in 2017 all the way up through 2020, and some of us still continue to, we found out that the CIA was actually involved in, and were the ones that were actually running North Korea and causing all the atrocities, basically to scare them straight and make them follow the line. Why do you think Kim Jong-un was so happy to meet President Trump, invite him into North Korea and shake his hand, and adamantly wanted to meet with him in Singapore? And why, during that same day that they were going to meet, which it's not out in the news, but those of us that researched it know that not only did they try to shoot President Trump's plane down from Whidbey Island that day off of a naval installation with a missile, but Kim Jong-un's plane was also targeted. And if it wasn't for the good guys that we have that were in the United States Air Force with the F-16s that were trailing and at the protection for Air Force One and Kim Jong-un's flights, they were the ones that intercepted and took out those missiles. This is stuff that we knew, but you don't hear about it on mainstream news. The only thing you hear about with an assassination attempt against Trump is the one that happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. He's had at least 35 or 36 attempts since 2016 when he decided that he was going to run. So the CIA, probably in conjunction with a little bit, working with DARPA in connection with the biolabs. But the CIA likes to work with stuff there. Like, if you want to get into the woo-woo, they're probably working with genetically altered entities down there, things that they've created, clones or whatever, because it's not legal in the United States. So they're doing it there with their mad scientists in these biolabs, which most of them are underground. I have a picture. Let me see if I can get it and share it with you. I think I can. I don't know if I could do this without messing up the screen, but we'll see what happens. I will try. I will try to find it. I think I might have put it in one of these. It might even be in my downloads. I save stuff all over the place, and I should have had it ready, but I forgot because I'm kind of in a mood. Let me look in my downloads. No, there's nothing there for downloads. I don't think I put it in pictures. It's got to be on my external drive because I keep everything offline. So here it is. Okay, so these, everywhere that you see a red dot of Ukraine, those are where known biolabs are. Okay. I don't have a color coordination for what type of lab they are or if they're underground labs, but a good portion of these are underground. I believe this one up here in Kharkiv is an underground one. And then I think the one in Luhansk is too, and either in Odessa, Kherson, or I'm not sure. But they had biolabs, underground labs there. Okay, I hope you can all see the map. Should be pretty big on your screen, even though I don't have it blowing up the whole thing here. But anywho, all right. So the other thing that the CIA is known for is regime changes. And I believe that they had a lot to do with getting Zelensky in as the president because they knew that he was going to be somebody that was going to be pretty easy to handle. He would go really well on the puppet strings. Okay, and then we circle back to DARPA, and people say, well, how can you prove that there are biolabs in Ukraine? It's because Victoria Nuland, when she was being interviewed by Marco Rubio during a congressional hearing, admitted it right out in front of everybody. And you saw everybody that they showed on camera, their faces about fell off because they couldn't believe that she actually said it out in the open during a congressional hearing on C-SPAN. But she admitted to it. And that was the reason that they wanted aid for Ukraine, so that we could make sure that our biolabs that were over there were protected. And I think out of all those dots on the map that I just showed you, I think our DARPA and the CIA and all of their mad scientists, they're all involved with all of it. It's all ours. We might have some of their mad scientists involved with it too, but yeah. Okay. So the other thing about that whole interview with Victoria Nuland is it didn't last very long with that line of questioning. It was kind of put to end pretty quickly after she finally shut up. All right. So what that tells me is that not only Democrats, but certainly Rhino Republicans were also involved in lining their pockets with money from the military industrial complex. So, like I said, admit it, war is profitable, and the military industrial complex needs war in order to make their money. Okay? If there's no war or there's no conflict, they can't sell weapons. Okay? So one of the other, what I call the old school DC establishment, the rhinos, the Democrats, what do we call them? Warhawks. Lindsey Graham in particular, who fairly recently went over to Ukraine on his own accord, and as it was reported that the State Department nor President Trump even knew that he was going there to go talk with Zelensky. And this was 2 days before the peace talks were supposed to happen in Turkey. So the day before the peace talks, Lindsey Graham is on his way back to the United States, and that's when Ukraine pulls off a sneak attack into Slovenia and Siberia and took out like 40 or 41 Tupolev bombers. So would you understand that that would be another reason that Putin wouldn't meet with him? He sent his B team to go down there, the same people that were there in 2022 to talk to him. And basically it was a waste of time. They maybe agreed on prisoner exchange. That was about it. So anybody that says that Zelensky's not lining his pockets with money from these people, they're lying. They just don't know. Because the people that I talk to over there know for a fact. And it's gotten to the point in Ukraine that you're limited. It's like a communist country. You're limited on how much money you can make. The average Ukrainian makes somewhere between $300 and $500 a month max on their salary. A retired grandma who worked her whole life in a mine or a factory gets a whopping $50 to $70 a month for her retirement pension. Same with grandpa. And if, God forbid, you have too much money flowing through your account, the bank flags it and then lock your account so they can investigate where the money's coming from. And they aren't actually investigating because they tell you, oh, we have to hold it for 4 months. That's even if they get the money back. Out of those 11 people that I talked to, there were a handful of them that this happened to. One of them is my fiancé. So, in reference to Ukraine, Now, here's the thing: as I stated, all this stuff didn't like start yesterday. This goes all the way back to 2016. We saw these narratives crafted to turn Russia into a perpetual adversary, a boogeyman. He was Russia was the other boogeyman. Iran was the other one. Trump did Ukraine a favor by proxy by taking out, along with Israel, those nuke plants plus the other military locations there, because that's where the Shahed drones and the cruise missiles were made. Zelensky did acknowledge that. So basically, what's happening right now, NATO, and like I said, Ukraine is the pawn. NATO moved in troops and equipment and put it right on Russia's border, in Ukraine on Russia's border. And people wonder why Putin's getting nervous or he's getting itchy and like fighting back. You poke a bear too many times and he's going to turn around and bite you sooner or later. We can go back later and maybe look at the whole reason why he went into Crimea, but I think part of that had to do with one of the underground biolabs, because even Putin talked about it. He said, we got bioweapons being made right across our border, and in a country that borders us, and we haven't been friendly with each other. And he says, speaking on bioweapons themselves, that they might have a propensity to use them. With the CIA involved, I wouldn't doubt it. Okay. So again, I mentioned that Trump did Ukraine a favor by taking out Iran's nuke facilities in concert with the Israelis, where they took out those factories where the Shahed drones and the other missiles were being made. They basically obliterated that along with the nuke facilities. And I put the word obliterated in quotes. Okay, so this isn't about defending democracy. It's about power, influence, and reshaping alliances. And we got to ask ourselves, who really benefits? Who benefits from all this? And I believe anyone that supports the military-industrial complex and building the war machine, they're the ones that profit from the companies that make the bombs and the missiles and whatever, down to the senators and the congressional members that lobby for them, and all those in between. And who are the losers? It's not just the innocent Ukrainians. It's the innocent Russian civilians too. They want nothing to do with the war, and they would all prefer to have peace. Everybody wants. If you're a regular, normal civilian, you want peace. You want to be able to go into town and go to the latte cafe and sit with your friends and laugh and joke around and have a good day and enjoy nice weather. They can't do that. Not very often. Maybe I think Lviv might be the only place where they can still sort of do that. For a little while, they were doing it in Kiev, but not so much. The people in Kiev are staying close to their bunkers. And I say this because I know people from both sides. I'm friends with some Russians and some Ukrainians. I built a friendship with all of them, pretty solid. And I feel that we've been very honest with each other. And they're all telling me the very same thing. They don't want war. They just want everybody to stop. So listen, okay? I'm not trying to spoon feed you a new narrative. I'm just here to help you question the one that you've been given, okay? If you can understand that. figured that we could take and unpack the truth together. I think even if we're not having any kind of a dialogue back and forth on here, and I don't have anybody to talk with that's coming on with me, please leave comments. Leave your comments and let's have a discussion about your thoughts about the things that I'm telling you. Do you think I'm giving you a line of bullshit? I don't think so, because I'm hearing it from real people that are there, that are in the chaos, that recognize the sound of a drone, or if it's a drone flying over, or if it's a missile, or if it's a cruise missile or a ballistic missile. They know the difference. They can tell because they hear them every day. When one of them hits a target and blows up, they can tell you, oh, that was a drone, or oh, that was a cruise missile, that was a Shahed. They know because they're living it. And I don't think this issue is going to go away, and I'm not going to stop talking about it until the war is over. And the real boogeyman, the military-industrial complex, and those that support them are brought down or taken out of office or face tribunals at The Hague. So I really would like to have a dialogue here, and I get notifications of new messages. I would like to have an adult conversation. Put cognitive dissonance off to the side, party aside, and talk about a real human element about something that's going on. Get a lot off my chest. Yeah, if you look down in the descriptions too, I've got my GiveSendGo campaign that I'm running. I'm trying to get a little bit of help from my friends out there. Anybody that can feel it in their heart to give a buck or two to help me get my fiance out of there and over here. We've got a lot of things that we are planning on doing together on this platform. You can share it on your social media. Are down there, forpatriots.com. Through the 4th of July, they've got 4-week food. Awesome. It's good, really good food. 4-week food supplies. When you buy one, you get 2 free. And then always with EMP Shield, and they're coming out with new products all the time. They've got one now. If you have Starlink, or even if you want to protect your routers or your cable modems and things like that, they have EMP shields for those too. And you get 50% off just by clicking my link. And if you buy multiples, so like if you bought 2, you get an extra $20 discount. And it goes up in increments. We're up to like $200 off. It's pretty crazy. So I'm still doing research, guys, even though I haven't been around a whole lot up until now, where I'm just starting to get back into it. I've been doing a lot of research. I've learned a lot of things in the time that I've been down, and a lot of this stuff pertains to what's going on today. Like, people got to have eyes to see and ears to hear. You got to use them. Listen to the words that people say, especially like listening to President Trump when he talks, because he doesn't always come right out and say certain things. It's because he can't. But if you listen to what he's saying and read between the lines, you'll get an idea. Okay? So, speaking of research, if you're out there doing your own research and it's not bringing you back to Jesus Christ, you're looking in the wrong place. Keep your head on a swivel, be safe out there, and I'll see you on the next time I come back. God bless you all out there on the other side of the screen. You have a good night.